So you stumbled upon our podcast. Hope you got your lighter. Sup, I'm Lotta. Welcome to Functional Potheads. Okay, we in here. So this week has been, I wouldn't say uneventful for cannabis, or myself, or the state of Washington. It fucking snowed a lot, and we were supposedly prepared. But I wasn't, and I don't think I ever will be. Because just the snowman. I don't drive in it. I'm a real Floridian. But in Washington weed, I was prepared because I stocked up. That's the one thing I got ready. Food and weed. And so I grabbed K Savage's Fatso. That's a little bit disrespectful name, but a great strain. It's a GMO cross. It's stinky and I can't wait to light it. And in the bong, if you want to hit it, I've already done it. Tilted's Double Tap. And let me get in here. Double Tap is a black banana cookies GG4 cross, I want to say. And that seems delicious to me. It was a great, even balanced high. And this Fatso, I believe, is an indica dominant hybrid. So it's going to be more on the mellow, like any GMO strain would be. And that is needed, because when I tell you navigating this business world can be stressful. And with that, let's move right on into my affirmation, which is I will use cannabis to move through things I don't understand with grace. Man, I instantly get pissed off. If something is too confusing. After I say, wait, what? Maybe 3 or 4 times, I'm fucking angry. That's it. I just do not understand why confusion is needed because I feel like I'm logical. And if you explain it, I can usually get it. And so if I've asked you to explain it to me 3 times, I personally feel that you are doing an improper job of explaining the concept. And you transferred me to speak to at least 3 different people in this conversation, and no one was able to help me. And I know I'm not that obtuse. So there's a couple times where I just had to take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, puff on that ganja, and just try to be as nice to the person that I'm working with, because in the end, I needed their assistance. I need this done. If this isn't functioning, then my business doesn't function. So with anything, understand that the part that pisses you off is likely your ego in the situation. And you just have to walk your pride out of it and understand that, maybe you just don't know this. And I do not know back-end email setting, programming, or I just don't know it. I guess my MySpace days didn't actually teach me all the stuff I needed. So I'm just saying, walk with grace, y'all. Walk with grace. And we're going to hop right into cannabis news from here, now that I am in my zone. So, was it last time? No, it had to be on episode 2. We talked shit about that Republican senator from Idaho just being a dick. Well, I guess their house is with the shits. Sorta. So the House just passed a bipartisan proposal from Republican Mike Kinsley, Republican Lewiston, and Ileana Rubel called the Sergeant Kizit-Haber Medical Cannabis Act. And that sounds jumbled, but they named it after a veteran who was diagnosed with cancer and therefore needed, cannabis to aid in his recovery. So he gave a testimony when they were on the floor speaking to the House. And I think that's good. It was so compelling that it passed with only 1 negative vote against it. So while the Senate is up there trying to find ways to ban cannabis altogether, the House was like, oh yeah, we would like to see medical cannabis passed here, but medical cannabis only. So that's why I say, because their policy is still restrictive as hell. It would actually change the scheduling of cannabis. It would allow it for specific criteria of illnesses, but we've seen other states that start medical and go recreational, and we've seen the efficacy and the need to go recreational to keep up with and basically obliterate the legacy market that's there. If we don't all fall under that criteria to go get that medical card, and I still want to smoke cannabis, what am I going to do? On top of that, what are their gun laws? And how is all of that going to play out? Because I've mentioned before how if you're on a medical registry, you can't own a weapon. And I know Biden just mentioned how he's going to get more restrictive about gun laws coming up anyway, but it's a long road that we need to pay attention to. And I think those that are interested in cannabis in Idaho need to continue to do the community work. I believe they need like 68,000 signatures to be able to vote on it in the November 2022 election. And it would also have to win 2/3 support in the House, which is a pending House committee. So they still have a way to go, but I don't think that this legislation is going to satisfy the needs. Specifically, if you're looking at who they're competing against by surrounding states. Most of those states have a rec market. So if I can't get it from you and y'all criminalize the legacy market, I'm just going to drive to another state and go get my shit. And that speaks to the confusion of all legislators in different states that don't have a cannabis program. It's like, if we're going to do it, how are we going to do it? What are we going to allow? There's just so much that's up in the air. And the one country that has been like, well, we're going to solve it is Mexico. And that's our next article. Because Mexico is like, oh, we coming. For all these global little markets or whatever in cannabis, Mexico is going to be on the map. They decriminalized cannabis as a country, and it was a big deal. And then the most recent thing to happen that made it even more of a big deal is that they dropped regulations for how they're going to go about having the industry. If you look in the history of cannabis in Mexico, man, like even Mexican Americans, how they were blamed for marijuana that was coming up, across the border, just so much criminalization, so much stuff associated with it. So they decriminalized it as a country and then are now working on actually making it work for them and establishing the markets and the layout plan for it. I tried to read it. The copy I found was in Spanish. So I know I need a bit of translation because my Spanish is not that good. But I just want to say I'm proud of them for actually doing something about it, because that's how you even get the name marijuana. You know what I mean? And it was a slur. They don't actually like it, as far as I understand, because it was used in a mocking way. You know what I mean? So these things just need to be considered when we're looking at who's actually going to take it. We thought Canada was going to hit it big when they dropped their legislation. The United States has not come up with a national policy yet, and it doesn't look like we're going to come to a clear conclusion about that. Africa is still working on those, but that's made up of different countries. We've got, who else? Uruguay. There's a couple of countries that are coming up, and we want to see who's going to do it first and do it right. So I more power to you, Mexico. And that, in general, takes me to what I've seen most of the news about when you're looking it up, which is regulatory overhaul. The markets have been established, but now they're rewriting. Like Australia is rewriting and making the system easier and more user-friendly. How to register people, because the technology is ever evolving in this situation, and no one knew what they were doing in the beginning. They thought they were doing, but we were still learning as like growers and cultivators and extractionists. We're still learning different techniques and figuring out ways to apply it to the industry. Why would someone who doesn't even smoke it's not federally legal know anything really about the industry, like to be able to make regulations about that? How is that possible? So Australia is overhauling. We have different states working on new policies. Just all around, states are trying to get it together to figure out some semblance of what it could look like on a national level. So I predict in the next few years, that's what you're going to see cannabis news is about, like Maine just redid this, or Virginia, like look at like literally amending and changing. That's going to be the consistent theme in news, because as it grows, as we learn more on the ground, they have to change it. And people like myself and others are fighting for it to be changed for the better. That's why Washington is getting, one of the first places that you would think is like fully established. They don't have home grows, and they're working on that stuff now. Like, just little changes to try to get the ideal marketplace for their constituents is what we should be focused on. So we're going to take a quick break, and up next is Cannabis Corner.
The Bakersmen Collective presents.
Welcome, everybody, back to another segment of Cannabis Corner. Actually, the last Cannabis Corner at this moment in time until they give us more information. Studies are dropping every day. But, Quise, give it to us. What you got to have? What do you have for us? What
do you got on the have?
Yeah.
What I have on the have, my first cannabinoid of the day is going to be CBN, a.k.a. Evo. And we'll get into why I call it Devo a little bit later. But first and foremost, we must follow the pathway in which we get CBN. So CBN comes from THC. Once THC gets older and it's oxidized, we have one or two pathways that the cannabinoid can follow. It could become Delta 8, which we've talked about, or it could become CBN. The biggest thing that I'm going to start with that CBN does is it's a neuroprotectant. As of late, the NFL uses it in conjunction with CBD for CBD and CBN's neuroprotectant abilities.
Yeah.
So basically what happens is after a player receives a really bad concussion, what they do is they give you very high levels of CBN and CBD. And what these do is they coat these neurons in your brain. And so instead of the neurons not matching up when they fire, it coats them and keeps them in place so they don't misfire. And that the misfiring is the bouts of anger and things that we see with brain injuries.
Got it. Yeah. The neurons they're supposed to go like this, and then
they're supposed to line up. And what happens is that once that neuron starts to get beat on and the brain starts to deteriorate, that neuron starts to move away from its partner. And it misfires and it's received by another neuron, and possibly it causes confusion and things of that nature.
You wanted to say blue and you ended up saying green, or you wanted to go right and you went left, You
end up going left, or you just get angry, and like that's why you had all the studies of the NFL players who committed suicide, but the way that they committed it was unique. They didn't shoot themselves in the head; they shot themselves in the heart, so their brains could be studied for science.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a number of NFL players that did that.
Wow, that's
the biggest one was Junior Seau, and he left a note. I did this because, and I want my brain donated to science for answers for the guys that are going through the same things that I'm going through.
Yeah. Like, because I just don't know what's going on, to be imprisoned in your own mind, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just very, very interesting. Cannabis is touching it all. What else you got for us?
It's also an anti-inflammatory, really, really good for keeping swelling down. Actually, it's been used in the same way by the NFL for its anti-inflammatory properties. And last but not least, it's a sleep aid. And that comes from its mild psychoactive properties that you get. Psychoactivity is not a word. I actually looked that shit up earlier. And I was like, because I tried to type it out. Like, what do you mean it's not spelled right? Looked it up. It's not even a fucking word. And for its psychoactive properties, it's lent that from THC.
Yeah.
And it's really, really good. I'm not sure if anybody's ever tried it. And we've shouted Mobius out quite a few times. They have a few CBN drinks and other products that are high in CBN. Also, Green Rev has
that
a CBN.
Beauty sleep tincture that has a CBG, CBN.
CBD, CBN, CBG.
CBG. But I've seen a CBC in something, and I've got to find it. I'm going to go look when I go back to work.
That's such a beautiful segue, because the next cannabinoid that I have is CBC.
Hey.
And I've dubbed CBC best all-around player, and we'll get to that shortly.
Round of applause.
But first, like everything else, we have to talk about this pathway. CBC comes from CBG, like a lot of the main cannabinoids. By way of enzymes, we get CBC. Okay. And this shit is a powerhouse because it can do everything. It shoots threes. It D's up in the paint. It's going to shoot the layup on you. It's going to cross you. I mean, best handles, like a little bit of everything. The list of what it can do includes antimicrobial, cancer killing, antiviral, anti-inflammatory, reduces pain with very, very, very mild psychoactive effects, antidepressant, and it also stimulates brain cell growth. Like, what the fuck? Like, yeah.
The thing they said that you could never regenerate. Guess what cannabis is doing? Working on it. Like, I remember that when I was a kid all the time. The one organ that you can't ever regenerate is your brain. Cannabis says, I don't think so.
Yeah. Cannabis says not only will we protect your brain, but we will also stimulate brain cell growth. That's major.
Hello.
And the studies are bountiful when it comes to CBC. Bountiful in the sense of there's a lot of different studies. There aren't a lot of those studies being duplicated and done over and over for us to be able to say this is solid fact. And that's pretty much what all cannabinoids. Yeah. But we're starting to get a base of what they are able to do and with like where we're going with the plant.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I was looking at the study that we were discussing earlier, the one where cannabis helps with blood pressure. And what I like the most, or what I was talking about the most about the science community, is how like everyone can study the same thing. There's no problem sharing research because you could take that thought one step further. So now I've got your data. What can I extrapolate from what I know about how your parameters were set? Let's do another thing. And now we know all the layers at which cannabis can help the world.
And a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a trickle down. So to do the study on it, you have to figure out how to isolate it.
Yes.
And almost all of the technology that we have on like CBN, CBC, like these guys aren't making this shit up. It's the scientists that are doing these studies that are letting them know like, hey, like this is what you have to do. Like I've actually talked to a guy that works at a lab and he's in constant contact with people who study the plant from a scientific point of view. And like that's how he stays up on his extraction method.
Yes, that's so like finding out the boiling points of each cannabinoid or the terpene and everything that. It's crucial you can make this plant do so much if you understand the science behind the combustion technique you choose, you know what I mean? Or the consumption method you choose. The pathways are endless, and that's why the cannabis industry is so encompassing. It can touch every market because there's a place of knowledge that we're lacking in everywhere. You know what I mean?
I also found through reading one of these studies.
Yes, tell me.
I was under the impression that CBN is solely from THC.
Yeah.
But you can actually extract CBN from pure hemp.
Oh.
And the process in which they do that, they use iodine to isolate and to extract pure CBN from hemp
plants.
That's
so
why if you go online and you look up hemp-derived CBN, it will have like a tannish tint to it. That's from the iodine.
Okay, yeah, that does make sense.
The extraction process.
But I think that then means that you can get a good quantity. Like for those that don't want the psychoactive effect, because we commonly get the elderly population. I don't know if anyone's studying this yet. They should. But a lot of our customers over 60 are having trouble sleeping through the night. And they all tell me the same thing. I used to be a great sleeper, but now I just don't know what's going on. Well, I'm like, well, the world's going to shit, but, maybe it is something to do with getting older. You know what I mean? That, like, just our ability to have a great restful sleep diminishes. And maybe your endocannabinoid system needs a boost. So what if we could isolate or increase the quantity of CBN in what they're consuming, because that's all they really want. They can't handle any of the heavy stuff. And a lady that told me that her his equilibrium is already affected as a result of his stroke. So she only can give him small amounts, because if she gives him cannabis, then too much, his equilibrium is extra messed up and he falls. So like it's like this fine line. So there's things that we could isolate just to help us, you know what I mean? Once more and more studies come out. And I think it's very interesting. The data you can collect just from sale transactions, you know, conversationally. Just random side thought, but I thought I should mention it in what we're saying here because this is helpful, you know, to a large group of consumers out there. So.
Yeah, I would honestly, if you have customers that come in and they want these products that are like high in like other cannabinoids, I know as a whole, like we don't do the best with providing those things, especially like in Washington. Like there's not a lot of companies that provide what people are looking for in the way of that. Yeah. But the best thing to do would be like, hey, there's hundreds of thousands at this point of hemp companies that are doing these extraction methods. The biggest thing that you want to pay attention to is that they are organic in their grow process. They're not using any heavy metals and that everything's tested. Like those are the two biggest things is that they not only they say they're organic, but they back it up with the test results.
And if you're patient enough, Washington is going to say you can grow your own shit soon. So when you grow your own weed, then you learn a little bit more about extraction. You get your own stuff done.
Self-efficient.
Exactly. Which is what I am. Free the people, free the plant. You know?
Back.
Yeah, like, so let's go. Thanks for joining us, man. I think that was a really good little cannabis corner end, you know?
Thank you.
We're going to find another way to come back to you. I think we should have some educational terms that we like to clarify. You know, that's how we should do it. I have an idea for a new segment, and y'all better stay tuned. Damn it. Okay? I think that's a wrap, y'all. And we're back with Light Up and Listen. So I think everybody was just waiting to drop the newest albums for me this week. Like, out of nowhere, people that I kind of in my head a few times have been going, oh, where have they been? All released albums. So, first off, Fora dropped Heartbreak Hotel, which is an EP. I think it's about 7 songs. Very emotional. He had recently, I guess the year before, 2020, dropped an album. So I wasn't expecting something else from Fora, but he wanted to give us music that he was creating, and I appreciate it. I went through my little sad girl feelings, and it was great. Actually, all of this music was like almost like down tempo R&B. Dylan's cracking up here because that's what I was playing. So Pink Sweats dropped Pink Planet. If you haven't listened to Pink Sweat's music, I don't know what you're doing. You're living under a rock. It's very interesting. I think more loving. And I do believe he could have dropped the album the week of Valentine's Day. Yeah, I would say that week or so. So check out Pink Sweat's Pink Planet. It is a great listen, especially if you want to be in your feels. Lucky Day. Oh, Lucky Day. I appreciate his album the most, I think, because it's called Table for Two. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, so it's going to be like a Lucky Day album where he sings a love song. However, every song on there featured a female R&B singer and a prominent one, some Mahalia, like Ari Lennox. Like, he brought the girls out for that little EP, and they were duets. And I just thought, like, I love a story. I love a connection. I love a one piece of work when you do that as an artist. And so I appreciate it, Lucky. So shout out to the album. I would say go give it a listen. Tell me what you think. That was it for my week. Nothing got knocked over. And I think we just flowed through the show. Well, it's dope that you took the time to have a J with us. Until the next session, remember, we're just a few functional potheads out here trying to bring the light and truth about cannabis. Peace out.